Story 1. Update: should I 27 male tell my friend 25 male that I didn't realize we were dating? Original post: I know it probably sounds bad, but hear me out. In my head, it's a long story, but I'm going to try to keep it as short as possible. Sorry if it sounds choppy, also English is not my first language. Last year I had to move in with my parents because I was having a hard time finding a new place to rent after a really bad breakup. My parents and I don't get along great for a lot of reasons, and it made everything a lot worse to get out of that. I eventually decided to apply for some jobs in other places. At the time I didn't really want to since I'd lived in that city my whole life, and I liked my job, but I just couldn't stay with my parents anymore. I found a job pretty quickly because this hotel was reopening after changing owners, and they weren't finding staff easily, so I ended up moving here in October. In the beginning, I wasn't socializing much because it's really hard to find friends here when everyone already knows everyone. My country and region are doing well, so no confirmed cases in town yet, but it definitely didn't help with making friends. I've also been pretty busy because I decided to buy a house. It's kind of happened because my boss knew the previous owners, and it was super cheap since I needed a lot of work, but it definitely made this move very permanent. Then in May this guy, let's call him Eric, and I got stuck in the social distancing queue outside the pharmacy together and started talking. I told him I was new, and he invited me to a barbecue with his friends. I'm not great with new people, but they made me feel welcome and were very nice. After that we just kept hanging out, mostly me and Eric, which I thought was because he was quite careful during these times and only saw his big group of friends outside. Plus, we were the only two who weren't in a relationship or had kids, so it made sense in my head that we were alone a lot. I'd cook him dinner, lunch, I'm a chef, and he'd show me great hiking places and help out a lot with the renovations on the house. I also started telling him about the breakup and stuff, and even though I feel like I've moved on, it was still nice that he was so understanding. Like, I always thought it sounded so cheesy when people talked about knowing like a week into a friendship or a relationship that it was going to be different. But that's the only way that I can describe what it's felt like. I promise now that I'm writing it down, it's so obvious, but I honestly didn't think much of it since I've never dated a guy before. Then like 2 to 3 weeks ago he called and asked if I wanted to have dinner on my next night off, and also said just you and me. He seemed kind of weird and formal, but I assumed it was something else going on and just said yes, to which he responded, "It's a date then," and I assumed that he meant that as a jokey line because I have friends who have in the past. He picked this restaurant in another town that was relatively fancy that had never been to, and I drove him home afterwards, and he told me good night and that he'd had a great time. Usually we're not that formal with each other, but we weren't really acting that different during dinner, so again, I didn't think much of it. Then over the next week or so, he started sending hearts and texts and would call me some pet names here and there, which is the first thing that stood out to me a lot. Then earlier this week, he grabbed my hand while we were out during his lunch break, and that's when it finally clicked. It really caught me by surprise, and I didn't know how to react, so I just tried to play it cool and go along with it. Then yesterday he texted and asked if we were still on for our movie night on Sunday. I just said yeah, of course. I'm starting to panic a bit. I grew up pretty conservative, and I guess didn't question my sexuality a lot. Even when I got to the university, and a lot of other people were. I've always been awkward when it comes to that stuff, and I've never really made the first move with any of the girls that I've dated. But I've been thinking about it for the last few days, and I've realized that I really like him, and all the stuff he's done never made me feel uncomfortable. Quite the opposite, actually. He's cute. Definitely what I would have said is my type, but like a guy version, and it feels different than any friendship that I've ever had. Like, again, looking back, I definitely haven't been acting super platonic with him, and we've gotten close really fast, and if I'm being honest, if he'd been a girl I would have assumed that's where this was going. I guess my issue is, should I tell him the next time I see him that I didn't realize we were dating? Should I wait? Does he need to know? I don't want him to Feel embarrassed that he assumed or think that I'm just using him to figure myself out. But I also don't want to lie, I genuinely want to see where this goes since he makes me really happy. Now for the comments before reading the update. Well, I don't know if you have to out the fact that you were too naive to realize what was happening. That would embarrass the HLL out of me, lol. But it's probably a good idea that you let him know that you have no previous experience with men. I think you would do well to look up the term demisexual. It's being attracted to personalities, not aesthetics or other obvious characteristics. Your experience sounds exactly the start of every relationship that I've ever been in, lol. You're just hanging out platonically with a friend or coworker. Then one day it just hits you that you've got feelings. The first time it happened with another woman for me was super eye-opening. Like I was very open-minded and had a bunch of LGBTQ friends, but had never been attracted to a woman before. Kind of changed my orientation to bisexual for a while. Only learned about demisexuality within the last few years, and I finally feel like I have a label that fits, but F labels love who you want. Thanks, I'll definitely look that up because it kind of sounds like what I felt before as well. Work kept me kind of busy yesterday, so I didn't have a lot of time to think too much about it, but I'm gonna look some stuff up before we see each other tonight. Really appreciate it. This person says let him know that it's your first experience with a guy and that you may want to keep things moving slowly to fill out yourself in this type of a relationship. I also suggest that you clarify whatever your relation is. Don't just assume you're dating unless one of you has asked, because it may lead to confusion in the future. Congratulations on finding someone you like, man. I didn't read the genders at first, but this is just really wholesome. I grew up really repressed with a lot of internalized homophobia. I'm really glad that you have someone to literally hold your hand while you explore this aspect of yourself. My advice, say it out loud, literally. See how it feels. If it feels uncomfortable, don't say it to him. If you say it out loud and no longer have the urge to say it, that's fine too. Sometimes we just need to say things out loud. If it makes you laugh, then maybe the moment is right. Oftentimes I just need to say things out loud to myself, and then I no longer feel that urge to tell anyone else. And now for the update. So we had our dinner movie night yesterday, and I was very nervous. Mostly because I was scared that how new it was to me was going to be a deal breaker. But Eric came over and I think he instantly realized I was acting weird. He didn't say anything while he was helping me cook, but then we sat down to eat and he almost immediately asked what was up. So I basically said something like, I really like you and I want to see where this goes, but I want you to know it's very new to me and I'm not sure you're cool with that. And he asked what exactly was new to me, and I said I'd only dated girls before, which then led to a conversation where I couldn't avoid telling him that I didn't realize we were dating until that lunch. He actually got really quiet for a few seconds after that, and I was scared he was upset, but then he just laughed. Basically, he thought I'd been flirting with him for quite some time. Looking back, I probably was, just not intentionally, and all of his friends had been saying like, he seems so into you, it's really obvious, he's probably just too shy to make the first move. He even mentioned some other stuff we or I had done that I gotta admit definitely doesn't sound platonic when he retells it. So I can see why they thought that, and ultimately they were right, I guess. And during that lunch, he apparently thought I was reaching to grab his hand, so he reached out too. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't have done it because he said he's never been good at making the first move physically. He said when he asked me to dinner that was a huge deal, and that his friends had tried to hype him up for a while, and that's probably why I didn't realize that he was asking me out since he was super nervous. Anyway, we ended up talking a lot after dinner. He didn't come out publicly just aside from a few close friends until a year ago or so. So he definitely understood that I don't have a lot of experience. He hasn't had a lot of relationships in general, at least not any proper and public ones, since he hadn't come out, and it's pretty conservative in that area, so there aren't a lot of guys who are out of the closet here. He actually admitted that he'd even been nervous to talk to me that first time we met since I looked kind of lumberjackish. His words, not mine though. The day that we met, I think that I hadn't shaved in a while, so I don't doubt it. And he also knows rumors travel fast here. especially when someone doesn't really fit in, so I guess he was worried that I'd fit the small-town conservative type where I've heard all the gossip. The whole "it's a date" thing, for example, would never happen between two guys who were just friends here. I've definitely noticed the culture, and it's something we talked about too, since being out here isn't always easy, so we might try to keep it low-key at first and mostly tell his friends and some of mine. I could probably ramble on about him and what we talked about for a long time, but to keep it short, it was a really nice talk, and we want to take it slow. But we also realize we've basically been half dating since May, so it felt weird not to make it official. So I guess I've got a boyfriend now. Thanks guys. Edit. I really didn't expect this to get as much attention as it did, but I truly appreciate all the kind words, and I'm really happy you found some joy in this story that just started with me being oblivious and confused. I might actually have to show this to Eric, because all the support is making me really emotional over here. Edit 2. I'm kind of shocked at the number of comments on here. I thought there were a lot of just when I went to bed a few hours ago. It's overwhelming in a lot of different ways, to say the least. I only started using Reddit for renovation advice, and that usually gets me a few helpful comments, so I guess that's what I thought would happen here too. Thank you all for your love though. I'll try to respond to a few questions later when I'm not feeling as overwhelmed. But I'm sorry that I just can't answer all of you. Edit 3. Okay, last update before I log out. I'm very overwhelmed in a lot of different ways, and I think it's best for my anxiety to exit this for now. I know it sounds silly since I posted on here asking for comments, but I'm just not good at getting attention, and I didn't expect more than a handful of helpful comments, since that's what I usually get on my main account when I ask about renovations. I guess I should have been prepared for the small chance that a lot of people saw this, but after my original post got about 10 or so comments, I didn't think much of it when posting the update. I looked through some of the comments and messages though, and I wanted to answer some of the main questions at least. I'm not American, and no, English is not my first language. The only reason I added that to my main post is because sometimes on my main account there would be phrases or names of tools I just don't understand or know the word for. See, now maybe that wasn't needed here, and I'm sorry if it confused any of you. I studied English for many years, but school English is very different from internet and everyday English. I know my grammar pretty well and basic vocabulary, but I couldn't do my job in English. Some people asked where I lived and how it would be so conservative. It's just a small town culture that I can't quite explain. Everyone knows everyone. False rumors spread easily. There are some people who've known to cause trouble who grew up here and think they own the place. On top of that, just the general attitude towards everything is very old-fashioned. It's not hard to avoid, but still worrying. I don't use this subreddit. People have mentioned like 5 different posts that are apparently very similar, but based on how many people in the comments have also been in this situation, maybe it's pretty common. I genuinely don't know what you want me to say to that, except I haven't read them, and I can't seem to find them either. I can only speak for myself, and you can choose to believe me or not. That's up to you. I got the advice I needed, and that's all that matters to me, at least. I know this might sound very love story or movie-like, but in reality it's just me realizing I like someone and wanting to start a relationship with him. My life isn't very exciting, and I prefer it that way, which is why I'm very happy I made this a throwaway account so I can look back to my regular stuff. Haha. And while this is making me quite anxious, I don't regret posting it. Reading other people's stories has been very emotional, and I wish I could handle going through them all, but I don't think that would be good for me right now. Just know I appreciate all the advice and love. I didn't want to bring this up because it seems irrelevant, but after my last breakup I was probably at my absolute lowest point, and I never expected that I would get into a place where I'm feeling this is hopeful, or at least not this fast. So again, thank you so much, and maybe I'll update this in the future if something happens. But right now I'm happy to leave it as is. Story 2. I 19 male, my mom 38 female falling in love with the spinning teacher, 34 female plus update. Original post. For some context, my dad passed away when I was young in a car accident, exactly when I was 4. so she tried hard to make sure that we had a good life. My mother worked in various places until she got a well-paying job, which is the one that she currently works on. We grew up in a somewhat conservative area where homosexuality, not that it wasn't frowned upon, there were LGBTQ people and they were completely accepted. But there were families who didn't like the idea of homosexuality too much. My mother grew up with that mentality. She didn't hate the LGBTQ idea, but she certainly disliked gay couples a bit. One time when we saw a gay couple in the mall, she said something like, "They shouldn't do that in public, much less kiss." During my childhood and adolescence, she had several boyfriends. Her longest relationship lasted almost 5 years. I really liked that guy because we used to play Monopoly and various video games. Luckily, we still talk because he is one of my mother's best friends, but they both decided to take different paths and had to separate. Now or months ago, a year ago, I started to go to the gym near my house. She began to notice my physical changes. It crossed her mind to go to the gym with me. Until several months ago, he started going to the gym after thinking about it a lot. After months, she lost a lot of weight and improved physically. I noticed several guys from my gym looking at her carefully. Something that makes me laugh is when she shows off her six-pack to me and how she now says that she doesn't need me to open the jars of jam or pickles anymore. In September, she signed up for the spinning class with other ladies. At first, she only went in the mornings, but after 4 weeks, she also went in the evenings. My mom told me that she had become friends with Jennifer, the spinning teacher, not her real name. Some weekends she let me know that she was going out to eat or run with Jennifer. This is how their friendship continued. There were times when my mother spoke with Jennifer for several moments on the phone or on WhatsApp. I began to suspect my mother's feelings towards Jennifer when one day they went out for a run, but it started to rain. I heard from the noises that they came running and stood next to the roof on one side of the entrance. I looked out my window and saw them both outside the house. Jennifer and my mother were laughing, and I saw my mother's face completely red and nervous like when she was with her boyfriend from before. Jennifer's face was the same as my mother's. Then they gradually stopped their conversation and looked at each other. I saw my mother look Jennifer in the eyes and then shift to other parts. They both started to get closer, and for a moment I thought that they were going to kiss, but they both stopped. At all that time I was sitting in my room looking out my window. Through my window you can see clearly into the entrance to my house and the garden. Then my mom and Jennifer came home. I greeted them both. Jennifer and my mom looked a little uncomfortable, and then Jennifer left. I asked my mom if something had happened because her face was red. She flatly denied it and asked me not to talk about it anymore. More things happened. My mom and Jennifer's outings increased and tended to last longer. And the times my mother couldn't see Jennifer, she got a little sad. But something happened at the end of November. A person we know left his girlfriend for another guy. As soon as we found out, my mother talked about it privately, declaring how that was possible. What exactly was that for the children? That she would never have a relationship like that, and basically saying how bad things about LGBTQ people. Hearing her say this made me a little sad for her situation because clearly my mother had feelings for Jennifer, but she didn't seem to want or to accept it. 4 days ago I went out with friends to watch a movie. My mom was going to be home because it was her day off. I told her that I would be arriving nearby in the evening, but things happened and I had to return home early. When we arrived, my mother's car was not there, so I just went to my room and played video games. Shortly afterwards, I saw her arrive with Jennifer. I heard some strange sounds, took off my headphones, and walked down the stairs carefully, and I saw my mom and Jennifer hugging each other. I saw that my mom was sobbing. They both moved away, and then my mom kissed Jennifer, and she did the same. I returned to my room, being very careful not to make any noise. 5 minutes passed, and I heard them leaving. They both kissed again and got into the car together, and in case you were wondering, I had all the lights in my room off. The only thing that was on was my computer. About an hour passed, and they both returned with Walmart bags of paper gift bags and toys. My mother always gives toys to my nephews or the children of her friends. And yes, they were for them. My mother and Jennifer greeted me, and between the three of us we wrapped the toys with paper and kept others in bags. When Jennifer left, I asked my mom, not directly, if something was going on between them. My mother got nervous and denied it completely. For now, my mom has not seen Jennifer because she went to spend the holidays with her family just like us. At the moment, I can't feel happier for my mother. It seems like she's already admitted that she feels that she hasn't told anyone. But I'm going to try to tell her that I know by showing her all of my support and love, and that I don't care if she's actually gay. The only thing that matters to me is seeing her happy. Now for the update. Little update. Male 19, my straight mom, 38 female, fell in love for the spinning teacher, 34 female. I posted this in another sub a while ago, but it was deleted. But in another post I wrote a few details and a small update that I'm going to add here. Short summary of the previous post. My straight mother joined the gym near my house, improved a lot physically, and then joined the spinning classes. She met Jennifer, the spinning teacher. They became good friends to the point of going for a run and then having breakfast. But the relationship grew, and one morning they almost kissed outside the house. Before Christmas, my mom came home with Jennifer. My mom started crying, and then she and Jennifer kissed. Lastly, she was looking for a way to show my support to my mom. Some things about my mother. She grew up in a fairly conservative area, and she maintained that mentality. And to add that, she is a little religious. We moved when I was very young to a much more liberal area where seeing LGBTQ people were more common. I remember that she didn't like same-sex relationships at all, but mainly those of two women. When I was in high school, I had a friend who was bi. She had several boyfriends, but then she had a girlfriend. When my friend visited me, my mother seemed uncomfortable. She never said anything offensive to her, but without a doubt, she could see his discomfort. Well, now, after my previous post, I asked my mom if she had some kind of relationship with Jennifer. She replied a little annoyed, "No, why do you think that? Don't go telling anyone that you think that." I didn't comment anything anymore and only hinted that it was a joke, and ironically something happened at the New Year's party which was attended to my mother's friends and family. After a few beers, all kinds of conversations arose. Religion, politics, recent events in the country, music, and at some point relationships. Everyone was in the patio. I was on the other side of a glass door with shutters, but you could hear everything they were saying. One of the friends talked about his family, and I don't know what else, but then my mother responded to a question. I would never have a relationship with another woman. I don't really like those relationships. I can imagine how difficult they must be. One of her friends said sure, to which everyone laughed. 4 days ago, my mother and I returned home. As I expected, my mother called Jennifer directly. I don't know what they talked about, but my mother looked clearly happy. Later she told me that she spoke with her. I mentioned the idea of her inviting Jennifer to dinner, to which my mother agreed with her doubts. So, Jennifer will most likely come to the house for dinner tomorrow or in a couple of days. I guess my mother still doesn't feel ready to admit that she has a girlfriend or that she likes women. For the time, she has flatly denied it. The idea I have is to improve relations with Jennifer little by little until my mother feels more comfortable talking about the subject, and talk little by little about how I support these types of relationships. Not so obvious winks about her, or I could wait a while, but I just want her to feel comfortable and be happy. Is this way of supporting her okay, or do you know another way I can support her?